So when I was a little girl, my grandma would always tell me stories of how when she lived in Switzerland during World War II, she would be outside playing with her siblings. Now, Switzerland, as many of you know, is a neutral country during World War II, but that doesn't mean that they weren't attacked. She distinctly remembers one occasion where she was outside with her siblings and she heard the bomb sirens go off. Now, she was a little girl. She was out in the middle of a field playing. There was no shelter. All she had was her little red wagon. So, out of fear, the little red wagon was her bomb shelter for that event. Now, obviously, that bomb shelter wouldn't have done anything to protect my grandma. So thankfully, her city wasn't the one attacked. But there were many other cities like that were attacked. So, even though Switzerland was neutral, they were still greatly affected. So, Switzerland was affected in 3 ways. One, like with my grandma, Switzerland was bombed mostly along the border countries. And second of all, they had a bunch of refugees fleeing because it was safer in the inner parts of the country due to the neutrality status. And the third reason was, since Germany was so close, as you can see here, Germany was able to control the trade and the banks of the Swiss citizens. So, because of that shared border with Germany, and not only Germany, but Italy, Switzerland was heavily bombed by American planes. So, Jessica Davis Plus discussed how Switzerland was bombed by U.S. planes during World War II and shared an account of a specific bombing of the town Schaffhausen. Now, Schaffhausen was a town that was bombed. 400 highly explosive bombs were dropped on the citizens. Over 40 people died, and over 270 people were injured. And then the U.S. felt so bad, and they paid the damages for the city. Now, Tom Gardner reported that after these bombings and the payment was made, the attacks quickly subsided. The attack on Schaffhausen was intended for Ludwigshafen, and it was a town that was 235 kilometers or 146 miles north of Schaffhausen. That's the same distance from Idaho State University to Craters of the Moon State Park. Now, since the borders of Switzerland were very, very dangerous, a lot of refugees went to the inner parts of Switzerland, and that's where they found refuge. So according to Holocaust Encyclopedia, Switzerland took in 30,000 refugees, but sadly, due to the small size of the country, as you can see here, Switzerland was only able to take in those 30,000 and had to turn away 30,000 more. A famous refugee family is the Von Trapp family from The Sound of Music, but a lesser known family that also found refuge in Switzerland from Austria was the Beres family. So the Beres family, the parents married in Austria and went to go on their honeymoon in Italy. But sadly, due to them being Jewish and the borders being closed in Italy, they were turned away. Now, a man in a dark cloak came up to them and offered them 2 tickets free to Switzerland, where they found refuge. And they worked in a refugee camp and later became lived as Swiss citizens. And while they were working in this refugee camp, they gave birth to their son. And their son reported that they had overwhelming amounts of support and love and charity from the Swiss citizens, and they were willing to help because due to the German banks controlling Swiss banks, the Jewish families were financially unwell. So, and like that, that's the third way that Switzerland was affected during World War II. Germany had control over all trade and all banks, which made it so that they were able to destroy all Jewish banks and financially ruined all of them. And the railway from Germany down to Italy ran straight through Switzerland, making it so that they controlled all the Swiss trade, because Switzerland also used that railway for trade. And Alan Cowell reported that people were slightly worried that Switzerland benefited from German gold, but it was quite unlike that, because if anything, they were damaged by this German gold. And like the Beres family, all refugees were financially destroyed. So, even though there was debate regarding Swiss neutrality, it was neutrality through and through, neither for Nazis or for the Allies. So now we all know 3 of the ways that Switzerland was affected during World War III. 1, Switzerland was actually bombed by the US, and innocent lives were lost and hurt. And we heard stories from Austrian refugees who sought refuge in Switzerland. And 3rd, Swiss trade and banks were controlled by German forces. And this made false theories towards supposed Swiss power to Germany. So many people still believe that Switzerland was just neutral during World War II, but it was much more than that, and I hope that other people can learn that they were in fact neutral.